And it's spooling up.
Yeah, we're live now. Okay, I think we can just start the show now. Stand by.
Stand by. I'm not seeing the stream yet.
Okay, I'll wait for the
confirm it.
We'll wait for the delay to catch up.
We're good. I see your face there talking.
Here we go. Everybody, just mute your mics while the music's playing.
In a vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete, stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight.
And as they like to say, better late than never. We're sorry. We just had a little technical glitch there that Alexander is working his way through. We're so lucky to have him. And today we also have a guest who also has quite a few guns when it comes to technical stuff, too. I'm absolutely useless other than to make excuses. So keeping it real is what we do. And we're here at episode number 16. Can we go that far? I can't count above 20. So what are you going to do? Welcome to The Last Angry DJ. My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill. I'm an old radio guy, our good friend, producer, and my cohort that's here with me right now, Mr. Alexander Knight. He covers the millennial input, and he's the young guy. Alexander.
Good to be here, Mitch. Were you looking at notes? You got cue cards over there. Is that what you're doing?
Do I need to?
That's fine. Thanks for
Yeah, there's a guy standing across the street from me outside my condo with really big cue cards. Don't forget, it's episode 16.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical issues here. We'll put up that QR code like usual. We're just a bit flustered this afternoon there. If you want to join the community there, it's right over my left shoulder. That will invite you into our Discord server. That's the best way to continue the conversation after the show ends. But I don't want to waste any time. So, Mitch, we have a guest today, a good guest. This is going to be a great conversation. Who do we have?
Well, I'll tell you, here's a neat thing. Is you say on our little explanation of what we're all about that we have luminaries. So we have a luminary guest here, my very good friend Laura Thompson, who I know from the great Office Hours show. Laura is a technically adept person. Also is an expert on the technical aspects of getting. So it's a shame we didn't have Laura fixing our little technical problem here. Also academically is well versed and also taught me a lot about visually impaired. So Laura, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here. We're going to talk about some fun stuff today.
Yes, thank you. Mitchell, you and I met back at Office Hours, as you said. And then we did a series last summer on different disabilities and things like that. So it was kind of a surprise when Alex looked at me and said, "I need you to host." I was like, "Okay, I got to figure this out."
We're talking about the other Alex, Alex Lindsay from Office Hours.
Yes. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be there. I need you to jump in and host." And I'm like, "Okay." So we figured that out, and I got with the crew and we talked about it. But what I said to Alex was, I need somebody strong to read the questions. And my request was that you came in and read, because you just technically very smooth and very, very, very adept at reading. So that was kind of how that's kind of how that pairing happened. You and I had hosted the reader workshop for aspiring readers for a while before that with Josh and a few other people. So, but that's not where the story starts. That's not where the story begins at all, really.
Well, you know what? It's a good place to start because I remember you asking me last summer to do my co-hosting duties as the reader, the guy that reads the questions. And it's the subject line is visually impaired. Laura is visually impaired, so I just want to get that disclaimer out there. But the thing that was interesting for me is I've never worked with visually impaired people before. You know, I've been in radio, and I certainly should have, but haven't. And we had signers. We had the whole schmigally on there in order to do this. So in the course of the summer, I learned a ton about how to be accommodating, how to properly refer to people, how to use the right language. Don't be, you know, it is visually impaired, and I'm a sighted person. We generally don't use the word disabled. That's it's a common misconception. Pronouns, I already got over that because I was doing office hours. So Laura was just a great a coach for me to learn that, and it was quite an epiphany for me to learn all these things about just in general conversation. I'm a radio guy. I've been doing it for 45 years, but being a little more descriptive when you're describing things, how you handle yourself to make it more accessible, I guess would be the word to use. And
Yes.
that was a great lesson for me, along with one of our cohorts and viewers, Hershey Trivedi, taught me a lot about how to be more descriptive. So that was a great lesson and a great starting point, Laura.
Yeah, and I think that radio is a great basis for thinking about communication, because there's a lot of things that come across that you need to convey via radio, that things like television commercials and YouTube and those things have a visual component, where in radio broadcasting days that wasn't available, so they had to kind of describe. And it, like in some of the old radio dramas, you listen to them do that, and it's really, you can get, without being able to see anything, you can get a complete picture of what's going on in the scene, which I think is so exciting.
Yeah, radio has always been a friend of the visually impaired, and in fact, there are reader shows and other programs that to accommodate. And I'm glad you brought up the subject of the old radio plays, because it's something that Alex, our Alex, brought up last week. Is something we should go into. Alex, why don't you explain what you think would be a cool addition to our program? Now, since you brought it up, it's sort of your baby. I've had some a lot of emails and some comments from good friends about how we should move forward.
Yeah, so the one that I want to do, I mean, of course we could, if it's a success, we can do others, but I've always loved the Shadow, so I definitely want to do a Shadow radio play. That would be
Shadow knows.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed, it wasn't very successful, but I enjoyed the Alec Baldwin Shadow movie from the 90s. So I do like that movie, and I thought it did a good job with the subject matter. But I think it would be a lot of fun, whether it's the Shadow or any other one. But I just think doing some kind of radio drama and getting the opportunity to do a little bit of voices and act with other people, I think that would be a lot of fun.
And, you know, the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, radio, when it started out, was all about radio plays. And they always, you know, this is before television, folks. So a lot of people watching or listening right now don't have that reference of the Shadow that their parents probably, or maybe their parents, their grandparents listened to. Was the big thing. They used to gather around the radio, which was a console radio in the living room after dinner, and they would all listen to these programs. But what was really cool about radio plays was the description and the use of the theater of the mind. Laura, that has just got to be the most largest canvas that exists out there. Your theater of your mind, your imagination.
Yeah.
If you're visually impaired, you know, you can paint quite a picture on that canvas.
Yes, absolutely. And it's amazing to think about blind people. There's blind people that are very, very much into fashion and color, and they've maybe never seen it or can no longer see it. And they still, their imagination and their memory paints those pictures for them, which keeps them connected to reality and the things that they love. And sometimes it's not even reality. I have plenty of stories of things that I thought were one thing, and I got closer to them and discovered they were something completely different than what I thought was sitting over there. So,
well, it's the job of the presenter or DJ or whoever it is that's on the other side of that microphone to have the proper context, knowing that there are folks out there. And that's something we just need to remind people that are in the business of media, that they need to take the opportunity, whether it's a visual show like this one is, or a combination of audio and visual, that it doesn't take a lot to describe in context what it is that we're talking about. So if we're talking about a widget, why not describe what color the widget is, how big it is, what its relative positioning? It doesn't take a lot, and it was my friends that are visually impaired that put me on the spot to say, hey, just explain what that is that you're holding up or what you're talking about. Don't take it for granted. And the idea of doing the radio play, which Alexander has been mentioning, it doesn't all have to be the really super old stuff that our grandparents probably listened to. It can be something as recent as, and some people might remember this, Chicken Man. Remember Chicken Man or The Tooth Fairy? These were all radio plays that were being brought back. They're comedies. But remember Chicken Man, he's everywhere. That was something that a lot of I played those episodes when I was on the radio, and Firesign Theater, and there's probably a lot of other ongoing programs they're dedicated to doing radio plays per se. So we're committed to it. We think it's a great idea. We just need to start that conversation. So what would you see as a best case scenario for doing radio plays, Laura?
The best case scenario would be what you're personally interested in, because the more interest you can be, the more excited you can be, the more authentic you can be. And that's something that conveys to the listener is if you're doing something just to do it and you're not really excited about it and interested in it, it's that to anybody who is very conscientious about what they're listening to, which most visually impaired and blind people are, they hear the intonation behind what you're actually saying, not necessarily just the words. And if congruence is the word that comes to mind, would be you need to be congruent with what you're presenting. Yeah, I mean, maybe poll our audience and see what types of things our audience would even be interested in having produced.
I think it's a great idea to get the audience involved. And it's not just for visually impaired folks. It's for anybody who wants to be entertained. And its relevance to radio is never more important, because radio is searching for new things to be, maybe what was old is new again. Maybe that's the way to do it. So we were kicking around the idea, Alex, whether it was we should do it as a pre-produced item that, we go in a studio, we read our parts, and we add the sound effects and do all that. It's a lot of work. Or why don't we do it like they did in the old days when Orson Welles started out on the radio, by the way, doing it live in the studio. So we have everybody in a big Zoom room reading their parts, and somebody's doing the sound effects. Like if it's horses, it's like the Monty Python, coconuts.
I think we should do it live. I think that would be a great experiment, because like you said,
I like that
Mitch,
idea.
That is how they used to do it, and we've sort of talked about it already before, but radio is very much theater of the mind, and I think that dovetails nicely with today's subject matter of accessibility too. And you talked about being able to describe things, and that's one of those, the people that are really good on-air personalities have that capability, right, to describe things to you, because there is no visual medium with radio. So I think that'll be really exciting to do it.
Yeah, and let's get folks. So we'll move on so that Laura has a chance to talk about other things. But we do like the idea of doing a live radio broadcast as a radio play. It's the way radio started out. Some years ago, I did my show from the MGM Studios at Disneyland. I want to get it correct. And they had a studio set up with all the practical sound effects, the lightning and horses running in the carriage, and we faked the broadcast. It was kind of fun. So I got a little taste for it then, because, the old craftsmen that used to do all those practical sound effects, that was a whole thing. Playing the cues and the pianos and the door slams, and they'd have a door frame on the stage with a microphone on the door opening and closing and doing all the crazy things. So we're in. We like it. We want you, the listeners and the viewers, to heave in with your suggestions. I had a nice talk today with my friend David Adams, who's a carpenter, a master carpenter, and also happens to be a screenwriter. And maybe some people would like to submit some screenplays for this to do as a radio play. So David we've signed him up. He's already our first sign up. Anybody else wants to get on us, and it'd be kind of cool. And in addition to running on this show, maybe some of our podcast friends like Mark Giuliani, who owns a couple of radio stations in Lower Delaware, maybe he'd like to broadcast them. So we could do this and see how well it works out on our thing, and then toss it on to a few of our friends that own radio stations,
And
and
Taylor
say, hey,
also owns a radio station out in Ohio.
there you go. So
Taylor
let's
Sunderhouse,
let's expand this this wave of concepts a little bit further. But I love it for a lot of reasons. In addition to just being fun, I think that it does serve a purpose for the visually impaired. Maybe we'll get some press out of it, which is something we could always use a little bit out of. Laura, what other ways can we be a better steward of our broadcast airwaves to help visually impaired people?
Well, before we move on from radio, Mitch, I wanted to say that radio has a soft spot in my heart because as a young child, I was born with very, very poor sight. And one of the things that my mother found very, very early on that helped orient me to a space, particularly my in the night hours, was she would turn on a radio and she would leave it play in my bedroom, and then she would come in after, of course, after our local radio station went off, she would tune it to the easy listening overnight station that she could find. And that was where radio began for me. And I actually want to give a quick shout out to WPXZ up in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. That is one of the few still privately owned radio stations. They're owned by a little company called Render Radio that has like 6 stations.
It's not just about groundhogs up there.
No, it's not just about groundhogs. But yeah, it was, and it was a small town. So you knew some of the people that actually did the broadcasting on the radio, and, you would see them downtown in the square during different festivals and things. And it was just kind of like, and I grew up with, radio being a very big part of my life. And then the internet took over, and then internet radio became a thing, and then podcasts and then YouTube becomes the biggest, now source of my sound and I still do that. I still always have something playing somewhere in my environment to help orient me to where I am in space. And it's interesting that,
are you aware of any organizations on broadcast or broadcast channels that are catering specifically to visually impaired people and doing a good job?
I think it's the NFB and the radio reading service. I'm not sure who runs the radio reading service now. I'd have to actually go look because there are so many organizations that I'm not necessarily affiliated with, but that I use different services from. So I can't say there are 3 major ones for the blind and visually impaired in the United States. There's the National Federation for the Blind, the American Council of the Blind, and then there's, I think it's the American Federation of the Blind. So there's 3. There's AFB, NFB, and ACB. And then you get into, so I don't want to say which one actually runs the service because I couldn't tell you for specific which one it is right off the top of my head, but there is the radio reading service for the blind that still does newspapers, and they actually read the newspaper and certain magazines onto radio frequencies.
And of course, there's audiobooks, which have always served a purpose, sort of like morphine of what used to be. But I'm saying something very purpose-built for the radio play, because that idea, the shadow or Chicken Man.
I just wanted to interject for a quick sec, because Mark Giuliani,
go ahead, Alex.
He was saying that there's only a few small private groups left. Data Tech Digital, the Talk of Delmarva, is one of them.
WGMD down in Lewis, Delaware. Right, just a hop, skip, and a jump south of where I am. So that'd be cool to do that. So we're going to count Mark in as on our list. Let's keep a list here of people that are putting their interest in it. And Laura, I think you should be involved in this too. We could form a little board of directors for our radio plays, and you should be on it.
I'm not much of the situation for me is that actually reading a script live on air is would be a little bit of a struggle, but we could figure out how to maybe make it work in some way.
You could participate in any way you want to, even if it's just behind the scenes as a person that's as an advocate for visually impaired people, saying, "Hey, it'd be better if you did this." You can be a producer.
Absolutely, that would be fun.
That sounds cool. Alex, do you have any
fun.
specific questions you'd like to throw at Laura here about what we're doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, Laura knows I'm interested in technology. I'm involved with that with technology all the time. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Laura, was How do you see the major players in the market here as far as accessibility? How well are they doing? Can you give them a score? Can you grade them? The Microsofts, the Apples, the Googles of this world, Android versus
I
iPhone. Who's
hesitate
doing
to
a good
do
job?
that because they all have their pluses and minuses. What we have found in my work at the university is I have a MacBook Pro sitting right next to a Dell desktop because there are things that Apple does really, really well. But Apple's walled garden doesn't allow Microsoft to do certain things with we're Microsoft Campus for our email and spreadsheets and all of that. So there are things that you can't do. There are just certain features of Excel, even though I'm running the desktop version of Excel, that I need to go over to the PC and bring up JAWS because Windows allows different hooks into the system for them to. So I don't really want to score. Each one has their own. I know not too long ago, we did a thing on a Friday on office hours between Apple's spreadsheet program, Microsoft spreadsheet program, and Google spreadsheet program. And just like each of the different spreadsheet programs has their own uses, so does each of the platforms for different things technologically.
Yeah, I applaud your reasoning there. I think that that makes sense. I mean, it's so easy. We could make this a big flame war about who's better, Apple versus Microsoft. But you're right. I think they do have their pros and cons, and that's interesting. You know what? I didn't think about the walled garden thing with Apple. I get it. I guess just because I'm so entrenched in the Apple ecosystem, I don't really actively think about it too much. But you're right. I mean, there are certain smaller software developers who have had a harder time doing certain things, making products viable in Apple's ecosystem because of the restrictions and everything like that. So it's,
There's
it's
one particular feature. I'm sorry,
no, no,
Alexander.
go right
There's
ahead.
one particular feature that in Microsoft Excel, you can name a column. You can give a column a title, and then there's a particular function that you can type in. I'd have to actually go look at it. So you type the function in, and then it will read your title of the column, and then whatever row you're on, it'll read what's in that cell. You cannot do that in Excel with Apple VoiceOver. And for some of the stuff I'm doing when I'm working with students' records, like I need to go down the column of like numbers I'm putting them in classes, and I need the 5-digit registration number for each class. It will not tell me that I'm in the registration number column and then read me the registration numbers, because it's something with the way Apple programs VoiceOver. It doesn't recognize that formula.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. That's the good thing to point out. Now, what about with iOS? Because I know iOS has a pretty good. I don't know what Apple calls it, but for visually impaired people, I think you can just give it voice commands to open applications and do stuff like that. Do you think that
I actually am an Android user?
Oh, you are? Okay, well there we go. Let's
I'm
get
an
that
Android
out
user.
of the way right away. Okay. Okay, so you're an Android user. No, that's totally
Yep.
cool. So how is Google doing? Because I haven't used Android in probably a decade, and obviously they've made many strides since then. So
Google Assistant
are they improving?
Is probably Google Assistant. Like, people are amazed at I don't like Google made the thing where you don't have to put Hey G in front of a lot of your commands anymore. That's been a little bit of a misstep, in my opinion, on Google's part, because it will sometimes pick up now. If you say I need to Google blah 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 blah, it will set off my devices. But what people are so amazed with my devices is I can't nobody else can set off my devices. Nobody in my family can set off, or in my my environment can set off. Nobody at school can set off my Google Assistant, even by giving the Hey G command, because I've spent so much time working with it. It's so well trained to my voice that it takes time. That's years of working consistently with the Google Assistant to be that well trained to my voice.
And where do you see AI in this? Because obviously that's what everyone is talking about, right? That's you just every day you wake up, that's all we see in the news is about artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural processors, all this sort of stuff. Where do you see AI as far as helping people with accessibility? Is there something in there that we're going to see some major breakthrough?
As of yet, I don't see it being central and necessary. I do think there's a lot of potential for it. I spend so much time talking to my Google Assistant that I would not want to move away from the way I access my Google Assistant now. Like if they're going to add AI to it, number one, it needs to tell me that it's AI generated when it's reading it. And number two, it needs to still be accessible via the same ways. A lot of the problems I have with like the ChatGPT and that is you have to open the app, you have to go in, you have to hit the microphone, you have to talk to it. I can do the same thing with my Google, and it's a lot of people. And the other thing is a lot of people, those of us who run in like the office hours and the highly technical are talking about talking about the AI and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see it as much in like other places. Like when you're talking to people that are tech centered and tech, I don't see it as much in the general. Like when I go into some of the Hadley School for the Blind, if I'm in some of their groups, you don't hear them talking as much about AI as you do the office hours groups, the whatever.
Okay, that's interesting. By the way, your friend Susan, I think your friend was with Susan. She's in chat, and she was saying that you're faster on Google than she is. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, that is. Susan has a nickname for me. She calls me the blind girl tech. She actually had me go get the email address in. I actually got the blind girl tech. I actually have the email, the Gmail address now. Yeah.
Laura, what are some of your favorite devices you use to do text reading for you? What do you recommend?
I like there's JAWS on there's two major platforms on PC. That's JAWS and NVDA, which is non-visual desktop access. You've got TalkBack on Android, and then everything iOS is Apple's own voiceover. They each have their own set of what I really, really, really wish my shoot for the moon goal would be that all of these platforms came together. You know how emojis, there's like the emoji, the consortium that if you type a colon and the part of the parentheses, you always get a smiley face. I wish it was that way with these particular software packages, because I literally am working with at least 3 different sets of keyboard commands. If I'm on the Mac, it's one way. If I'm on the PC, it depends if I'm in JAWS or if I'm in NVDA. Where's it's a different set of key, and it's a lot to remember. People say that there was a conversation on Zoom Test Kitchen the other day about how they've made keyboard commands for some of the reactions in Zoom now, and it's like, yes, we've been waiting for this. And there was kind of that conversation of why would you want to remember that? Because that's what we do. We're already really adept at remembering. Like those of us who switch platforms, you've got 2, maybe 3 sets of keyboard commands, 3 things for the same, 3 sets of commands for the same action. Where am I at?
Yeah, how do you keep that straight?
Very adept to do that very quick. It can be very difficult. I mean, I spent 10 years with JAWS and Zoom Text before I ever learned about NVDA, or in the last 2 years have moved partially to the Apple platform. And you just begin to, okay, if it's this here, if I'm here, it's this. So this is, you kind of connect them to each other. And you start, you go with what you know, and then you just kind of start adding things on to your base of knowledge. Because if you try to start over and you try to just learn it from scratch, it doesn't work. And talking about there was a comment made here about being on, I don't know if it was pre-show or in the show, about speed of what the speaking. That is something that came out of JAWS, and a lot of particularly totally blind people can listen to books and podcasts and their screen reader at very, very high rates of speed, and that because we're trying to take in all that information auditorily that you guys can just, the visual people can just glance at and see. We're trying to hear it, and a lot of it isn't necessary, but you learn to pick out the necessary parts, just like you would with your eye, like a normally sighted person would with their eyes.
Right.
Radio added RDS to the broadcast, so you could see the artist and title and things like that. Have they expanded that to include more descriptive information for folks that are visually impaired? Have you seen anything like that?
I haven't seen anything like that lately, but I have to admit, it's been, I have, oh God, it's not the iHeart app. I think it's either iHeart or TuneIn. TuneIn's the one that I have, and I listen to the stuff I listen to on there. Like I tend to listen to MSNBC on there, and it's just MSNBC, and there's this little scrolling thing, which it doesn't do a great job of reading as to who I'm listening to. But I'm so familiar with MSNBC that I pretty much know who I'm listening to, or what.
Yeah, and on the same subject, captions on regular broadcasts, things like that. Some do it better than others. Which do you like?
Captions. Apple does an amazing job of captioning their keynotes. To the same degree, if you go into the language layers in an Apple keynote, you can get audio descriptions. And it's a really, really interesting, like I will say, Alex Lindsay has said it before, but the way to do a keynote is to try to emulate Apple, and that in more ways than not. They have, there's a separate, if you want to see the sign language, you can, it's a separate stream, but it's linked right there. It's very easy to get to. Their signers always look really good. And from what I've been told from people that actually utilize that as a language, it's very, very accurate, which is hard to do in real time, as we found out last summer.
It's funny you mentioned captions, Laura. We frequently you hear people say, oh, accessibility is something that benefits everyone, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And I think a perfect example is captions. How many people who are not visually impaired or audibly impaired, how many people put on captions because they can't understand the dialogue mix, right? Mm-hmm. My dad uses it all the time. And my parents watch it, everything with captions, right? So that is a technology that seemingly is very, very simple, but very, very valuable to a lot of people.
And a lot of people don't know there's a difference between open captions and closed captions. We always see, since the mid 80s, we've seen the little CC at the bottom, closed caption for hearing impairment.
Yeah, explain to that, because I never understood that as a kid.
Open caption, closed captions are where the user has the ability to turn the captions on and off. So with closed captions, you see the little CC, you can do it in YouTube even, you can go down and click it and it'll turn the captions on. Open captions are what a lot of people do with Zoom, where if they're trying to broadcast a Zoom webinar or meeting onto YouTube and they have the captions turned on in the webinar, by default, it burns those captions into the video that goes to YouTube. Now, there are other ways to do that, and it takes other software. You can send a separate stream of the captions and they become closed captions to YouTube. But most people don't realize that's an open caption because you can't turn it off. It's not at the user's discretion.
And on the subject of accessibility, what are your favorite ways to judge a website to see if it's properly programmed to provide accessibility? Because that's a big deal right now for people doing websites.
There is something called the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C. They have some tools that are free. And the name of the plugin is escaping me at the moment, but it's a free plugin you get from their website that is one of the ways that it's not only the easiest to judge it, but it's easiest to show. Like if when I'm dealing with software vendors and things like that, I like to send them, I have to screen cap and otherwise try to export that report and send it to them, because it gives them very clear, this is what's wrong with your website, this is where it is on your website, here's the free plugin you can go download. But no website checker is going to replace having someone who's actually proficient with the different technologies. And yes, everybody goes, we test with NVDA. NVDA is free. I understand. And this is a little bit above my technical head, but there's a difference in the way JAWS actually reads a website and the way NVDA does it. And then there's a third way if you're dealing with Apple VoiceOver. It's not a bad idea to have somebody with Apple check it on VoiceOver on both, whatever you're going to choose to support, whether it's Chrome and Safari or just Safari. I typically prefer that they support Chrome and Safari. But check it with VoiceOver, check it with your automated web checkers. But any automated, even the best in the business, is it's not a substitution for having a human do it. And then you get into these things like the ones that you're supposed to put one line of code in that makes your website accessible. And I have varying opinions on those, but most of them, let's say, are not glowing.
That makes sense. And what would you say to a company that says, like if you were to ask a question to a company about what their accessibility strategies, if they say, oh, well, we're not really actively working on that. What would you say to someone that says that? What's the strategy? How do they do that?
First of all, I remind them that if they're any form of public facing company, a McDonald's, a Kmart, a Walmart or whatever, that their website being inaccessible could land them in federal court through the ADA.
Wow.
That's the first thing I remind them of, is that if the general public, if you're selling something and the general public can go to your website and buy it, but someone using a screen reader can't complete the purchase independently, if enough people decided they wanted to, or if you really made somebody mad enough, they could actually sue you under the ADA, and it could cost you more in defending yourself in court than it ever would just to fix your website, right, or to put a person on that.
Well, that's as good as incentive as anything, is to get sued into oblivion. But, another thing, and this actually frustrates me too, because I've worked at companies that have this attitude where they say, oh, there's no demand for it. There's no one's asking us to make our application accessibility friendly. No one's asking us for, to make an app that is screen reader friendly and works well with that. And I always find that frustrating, especially when these companies have large teams of software development. And of course, everything, when it comes to software development, everything's a resource problem. Everything's resource constrained. But to completely ignore it, I'm baffled by this. And it's 2024.
You're losing business.
Right. It's 2024 and they're still saying this.
You're losing business. Yeah. And even better than being sued into oblivion is I know people with different disabilities that if the website doesn't work, or they get really frustrated, versus asking someone else to help them, will just go shop their competitor. If two websites are, one's accessible and one's not, and they offer similar programs and services, they'll just go to the one that's accessible. And it's not a small problem. Disability, I heard a thing the other day that disability is the only minority group that everyone can enter at a moment's notice in their life, be it a car accident, be it a work accident, be it aging.
Right.
Anybody and everybody could actually find themselves as a part of that group at any moment in time. Sometimes for a brief stay, sometimes permanently. And it's like something like 3.4 4 million people in the world have some form of visual disability.
Wow. Yeah, so
it's not a small group.
No, it's not. I mean, and it's really, I would argue that it's fiscally irresponsible to ignore that many people, because you're right. These companies are leaving money on the table by not making these apps work. And I do have to say credit to Apple, and I'm sure Google too. But if you are using Apple's frameworks and guidelines properly, you actually pretty much more or less get accessibility built in for free. It is if you're using Apple's hooks, it's just part of the platform, which is why it is so useful. And I would argue every platform, every product should be built in that way, because you're absolutely right. You are leaving a large percentage of people out there, and they're gonna go somewhere else. And why do that? Why let your competitor take your business? It doesn't make any sense.
It also starts with one person. Whether you're in a broadcast group, whether it's a media or audio or video, if one person, just one person you may be watching right now, takes it upon themselves to make them more aware of how they can incorporate that. And please do not discount when I said that I had I used an unfortunate term here for a second, so sorry. It was an eye-opener last year when I did the co-hosting with Laura, because I didn't understand what I was missing out on and what I was not doing correctly. It just takes a tiny little bit of effort on your part in every walk of life to make things more accessible. And the rewards on it are so great. And as Laura said, there are millions, 3+ whatever millions of people that can benefit from that. And I have to say, everybody that I've worked in the business through office hours, through this program, every single one of them have been very kind and very patient. Like Laura and Hershey have been very patient with me, and a great sense of humor to put up with my unbelievable gaffes when I'm, trying to explain something. And it just creates a loving, positive atmosphere. So when you try, and you might stumble a few times, there's no consequence to it. The fact that you tried was the most important feedback that I got. Thank you for trying.
Yes, and the other thing too is in this day of social media and YouTube and bloggers and influencers, there's no one right way to describe somebody with a disability. I personally prefer the person first language, where you put the person in front of their disability, person in a wheelchair versus, wheelchair bound person. It's one of those things that, and there's a million theories and reasons and that, but there has now become a culture of, no, I am my disability. I can't take my disability off at the end of the day like a shirt. So it's okay to say blind person or visually impaired person. And I get that too, but I don't necessarily want to be, my thinking on it is, I don't want people coming into it going, they're their disability first and then they're a human. My theory on person first language is we're all humans. And I've heard many people say lately the term special needs, they don't particularly care for, because my needs aren't different. How I accomplish those things and get those needs met may require some accommodation, but my basic human needs aren't different than anybody else's, which is again why I go back to the person first language, is because we're all humans. And if you remember that at the end of the day, it makes interactions easier. And my default is, if you're uncomfortable, do the best you can, and then ask the person, what term do you prefer? How do you prefer to be addressed?
Yeah, and the whole basis of The Last Angry DJ, me being the older guy that has different cultural reference points, and Alexander being the more recent millennial-ish, can I use that word, is that if you just want to be a better communicator and you're an older person, what Laura just said, everything, just roll the tape back and listen to what she just said, and then learn from that, because it's going to make you a better person for it. And maybe you won't be quite so angry about the differences in pronouns and where to apply the word, impaired and the first person thing. I love that. I think that's a great explanation. You should get that in print.
Thank you.
So let me ask a question, unless you had a comment about that, Laura.
No, go ahead.
If you're one of the other areas of expertise you have, you work in the academia, And one of the questions that we get a lot is, say you're a student and you haven't picked broadcasting or media or whatever they call it today as your primary interest in college or university or wherever you happen to be. How do you coach folks in the world of media in today's world? I mean, it's completely different than the way it was when I was trying to become a student at Syracuse University at the Annenberg Communications College. Or what they were doing then and what you're doing now are totally different things. How's that all different?
We have a communications media school here at the university I work for. And what we do is there are several, like, if we get students that have no idea what they want to do, we have some inventories that we'll have them take, and then we have them go talk to the people that work in that department that have been professionals in the comm media area, broadcasting, journalism, all those things. We have them talk to them, and then I think there's some like opportunities for them to do different things to make sure that I know the university here has its own radio station. And I think it's KLVU, I think is what ours is. But I was thinking it was 4 letters, but I think it's KLV. Yeah, KLU is what it is. But they give them some chances to do some things and experience some things to really get an idea if that's what they want to do before they go into the major. And then with my athletes, there's some other NCAA things we have to consider, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show. But yeah.
Do you get requests from students wanting to pursue some kind of media or journalism category, and how do you advise them these days?
The biggest one, like I said, I advise them to make sure that they understand what the business is about and talk to professionals who are in that business now. We have an entire communications department, and I do advise them to go talk to the people who have done this, because most of the people that teach have actually had careers in broadcast or journalism or whatever it is, and they've come back into a university setting to teach. And also we talk a lot about why is that, why question, or what's important about, or what do you see, and really kind of trying to figure out, if they think that they're going to get a comm degree so that they can go to YouTube and be the next Mr. Beast, we've got to have a reality check about what the possibilities are, what the steps are to get there, and if they're really okay with. And a lot of times nowadays, we're starting to recommend either communications with a business minor or business with a communications minor, so that they have both sides of it. And we've got amazing programs on both sides. But I really think that nowadays with communications, you need the business side of it as well.
That's a very important caveat, because even back when I was pursuing a broadcasting career, and I did look at college, and I decided that for me, it wasn't in the cards that I was going to go to college, because the reality was I was already working in broadcasting and I would learn more in doing the actual job. But I did miss out on a lot of those things that you're referring to that are tangentially associated with broadcasting. It's not necessarily a career, it's sometimes a skill. So if you have the skill of being able to go in front of people and present well, like we're doing right here, that makes you a better Zoomer. And if you're the better Zoomer, you run that room, that meeting. And it's like the analogy, I think Alex Lindsay's used this, is the suit of clothes. Instead of an Armani suit, you have the best looking video, best sounding video when you do a Zoom call. That probably has as much impact. So all of those little things could add up to work well for you. But my ancient knowledge of college recommendations goes back to a college degree is great to have because it shows you're able to show up at the same place at the right time and do the right things for the 4 years that you were there. And somebody that's thinking of hiring you knows they can depend on you to at least do those things. But there's other stuff you can learn while you're there.
The thing nowadays is that there's a lot of people say, how do I get the first job? How do I get my first job when they want experience to give you the first job? Sometimes that experience comes in the way of an internship or a volunteer opportunity or something like that that you got while you were in those 4 to 6 years, depending upon whether it's a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, that you're getting 4 to 8 years, I'll say.
And you're more likely to get an internship at a local TV or radio or cable system if you've had some background, so that the college can teach you what are the right handles, what are the great names, what are the great responsibilities. You get the basics, and you might be exposed to things that you would never do. I think Alex said that he was completely bamboozled by reading the weather on his radio show. And I was like, what weather? How important is that nowadays? Well, you never know. It might come along. You might be the weekend weatherman. Somebody grabs you and says, Hurricane Smith is sick today, so you got to step up and read the prompter and do the weather forecast. You never know. It could happen. And then you might find you got a whole new career going for yourself. David Letterman started out as a weatherman in some Midwestern radio station. So your entry level is irrelevant. Your skill level sometimes is irrelevant. You just have to be in the right time at the right place and never say no to a job aspect. If somebody says, can you do it? Just say, yes, absolutely. I can nail it every time. For example, I'm applying for a job at doing voice work for a radio station. I don't know where it is because that's the way it is now. And I sent an air check in. I haven't done an air check in 40 years. And I'm sitting there scratching my head. Well, how do I sound now as a current radio guy? Well, you got to keep your chops going. But the reality is I think I did it. I nailed it. I have it on my machine here. I sent it into the prospective client. I think they liked it. But I'm sort of like Schrodinger's cat right now. I don't know if I'm hired or not hired. So I'm neither alive or unlive or dead or whatever the case may be. So the most you can absorb, whether it's from a regular academia type environment, working at the local radio station, getting the internship, all those things are very important. So, but for the most part, I don't recommend it as a career generally, right now at least.
There are people that do come out of they work at their high school. Like our high school had its own TV station. Our public access channel for the area I lived in was at our high school, and there were a group of kids. We had a communications club, and they ran the TV station in the back of the high school, and that was So there are people that fall into those types of things. Those are also experience that you can use to get your first job. So not everybody has to go to university, and I totally technical school to your technical schools. Things of that nature are absolutely we still need tradespeople. We're never going to, in this digital age, we're always going to need the electrician, the cable and the fiber installer, the cable installer. The car mechanics have changed, but the Teslas still need somebody that know how to do something with them. So it's that not a 4-year degree. I have said over and over again, a 4-year degree is not for everybody, but there are those jobs that it does give you skills that you might not, opportunities that you might not come into otherwise. But there are people that roll right out of high school that have done something like broadcasting club for 4 years in high school, and they were managing the entire high school TV station by the time they were a senior, and they roll right into their first job. It's not higher education is not for everybody. But I will say, Mitch, I think you sat through my presentation. I don't have it accessible, that for people with disabilities, education can level the more education you have, the better chance you have of getting a job as someone with a disability. You've seen this, Mitchell, I know you've seen the slides I have on that, and I don't have them right here. I didn't think to pull them up and have them accessible today but the employment rates for people with disabilities are abysmally low compared to the general public.
You see employers working harder to try to make that work, or they just sort of ignoring it and doing other things?
It depends upon the sector, but the general feeling is that they're afraid to take somebody on with a disability. Quite often, a lot of your bigger employers can be afraid. Well, what's it going to cost me to take this person on? And I tend to put that back on them and say, what is it costing you in taxes and yada yada to support this person on a social on a social spectrum without giving them the chance to, we could go all political on this, and I don't want to, but there are just situations where you give them a chance. You can fire them, just like, you can lay them off or whatever, just like if they're not meeting your expectations for the job that you're trying to give them to do, as long as you've met them halfway. And there are organizations out there, Ticket to Work in the United States and things like that, that will help support you. The Job Accommodation Network through the federal government, things like that, that there are resources out there to help you understand what is expected of you. But our laws do not say that, you have to take them on and then they can perform poorly just because they have a disability and you have to keep them on your books.
Excellent point. And I appreciate you bringing it up. And I love the idea that you're an advocate for this. And I love the idea that you're in academia. And I love the idea that you're also pursuing being talent and being on camera and doing things. Because I think all of those are major accomplishments unto themselves. So congratulations for doing that. Where can people go if they're living with some kind of disability, or they're visually handicapped or audibly handicapped, whatever? Where can they go? What is the first step for them to investigate? How can they become more of employable?
It depends upon state vocational rehabilitation, whatever they call it in your state. Texas, it's Texas Workforce. Pennsylvania, it used to be the Division of Blind Services. I think it was actually rolled into the career and technology in Pennsylvania. Now there's something in your state that works at least in the United States. Every state has a vocational rehabilitation program, regardless of what they call it. And that's where to start. A lot of times, if you have a profound disability, and through K through 12, you'll be, as you head out into the world, you'll sometimes be connected with these particular services in order to make sure that you're getting the employability and the skills that you need to get some form of job after high school.
If you have any of those, pass them on to us, and we'll pass them on to our viewers and listeners, because we do have quite a few people. In fact, as a reminder, don't forget to smash the subscribe button. And my throat, as it gets a little choked up here. We have a giant thunderstorm moving through here, so I'm getting a little scared of seeing lightning bolts flying around in the room here. But Laura, thank you so very much for being on the program today. I think you represent an entire segment of the audience that so often we miss and we need to be more aware of. And as I said, it was an epiphany for me to have the opportunity and privilege to participate on your program that you did last year on office hours. So thank you for that. And I also like the idea that you have now been roped into being one of the board members of our radio play concepts here. I think that you would be an excellent person to be part of that, because why don't we try that? I think it's a great thing. So, Alex, how do people reach out and talk to us if they're interested in participating on our radio thing, or they got questions about what Laura's been talking about?
Yeah, so I would suggest people join us in Discord, and you can actually do that by going to the QR code that you see here over my left shoulder, which you should see now. That is the best place to communicate with us and talk to us about the show. If you have any questions for Laura's in the Discord server as well, and or we can relay any questions that you have about accessibility. And this is just the start of the conversation. I think maybe we can have you back again, Laura. I think this was fantastic. I think we need to continue to talk about this. It's very important. So thanks very much to everyone that came in today. We really appreciate you. Everybody in the chat who popped in. Ken Jones came in a little bit late, but Ken Jones is here in the chat too. One of our friends from office hours as well. You can also send us an email to hello@thelastangrydj.com for any feedback on social media as well, under the same name of the show. And we've got future guests planned, so lots of cool stuff coming up. And I'll let Mitch wrap up. Any other comments, Mitch?
Next week, Kirk Harnack, who's from TWIRT, This Week in Radio Tech. And I know that's one of your favorites, Alexander, but we do talk about technology once in a while. And the stuff that you play with, it's in the room if you're a DJ or, everything from the console to the automation system to the microphone to the preamp, the quality of the microphone. It's a long, long, long list of things. So we'll talk about it. Completely different subject than what we're talking about today. But that's the beauty of what we do here on The Last Angry DJ. We talk about everything that connects with or touches broadcasting in all its very forms. So I want to thank everyone for making this possible. Laura, you're a great guest. We'd love to have you come back, just like Alexander said. Alexander, an excellent producer, one of the best out there. And technically, you rolled the dice and made things happen for us technically today. I think we went down to the wire on fixing a couple little problems we had. You can show your approval of what we do every week by smashing that subscribe button. Yes, I've become one of those people. Next thing you know, you'll see me on your local public broadcasting station saying, please give your money so we can keep these great programs like Faulty Towers going, so we can keep these programs going all the time. And we're looking forward to working on doing the radio play idea.
Absolutely.
That should be lots of fun.
And
so
Mitch,
don't forget,
people
next
can
week,
give us money. They can give us money. Patreon.com
they can. Or coffee
/
or
Last
pizza.
Angry DJ. That's right. Patreon.com.
Okay, and don't we have Patreon?
Patreon.com / The Last Angry DJ.
There we go. So give till it hurts, folks. We'd love to have it. We'd love to have a few extra. Come on, we need a few extra subscribers. Make it happen right now. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already so that we can see those numbers. We're not getting paid to do this. We do it because we love what we do. So it's a good thing that our guests love it too, and all the folks that are here watching, thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Stream is clear. Excellent show. Thanks, Laura.
Good job, Laura. You nailed it.
Thank you.